Hello, and welcome to week 2 of our Apologetics class. A few quick notes before we get started and jumping into lesson 2. First of all, you'll notice each week in Google Classroom that the very first post is going to be called Steps to Completion. And if you open up that post, it's going to give you a step-by-step layout of the work each week and give you kind of a map that I think will help be the most efficient and orderly way through that week's materials. Usually one of the first things is going to be the weekly video that I do, just so that you can hear, okay, here are a few notes, here are a few highlights or things that would just to be aware of going through each week before we even get into it. That way you don't jump in and do a bunch of the work and then come back and do the video and then do the book or something else. This will kind of walk you through exactly what you need to do and probably what I think is probably the most efficient and orderly way through the material. Second, I think I mentioned it last week a little bit, but you are going to have to do the work of interacting with each other. One of the pitfalls of an online course is that you lose the interaction that a face-to-face class has. And in my opinion, what makes a face-to-face class really fun and enjoyable of being able to interact with each other and hear each other's ideas. We will do our best to replicate that, but it'll take more work, as in each of you actively taking some time to read other people's posts, watch their videos, look through the things that they have made, and then respond, right? Ask questions, lovingly challenge something if you aren't sure that you agree with it, encourage each other, comment on them, kind of the things that you would normally do in a regular class, but you're going to have to make a point to do it in this online setting. And that is what's going to really make this class awesome and beneficial and rewarding to you. Finally, if you have any questions, just a reminder while you're going through the material, or if you get stuck on something, either ask me your question in Flipgrid. It's going to be one of the top posts each week, is just a place where you can go, you can click the link, you can ask me a question on video, and I'll respond as soon as I can. Or you can just send me a message in Google Classroom and let me know, hey, what about this? Or I've got a question on this, whatever. All right, on to lesson 2 then. Lesson 2 is going to be, or is all about looking at what a worldview is. As we go through this lesson, it'll help you be able to describe not only what a worldview is, but you'll be able to describe different worldviews, different philosophies of life or concepts of the world. But more importantly, it'll help you set a Christian worldview for your life, one that focuses on Christ and his work for us. So, what is a worldview? Before we start working on an actual definition and kind of putting a worldview together, maybe just hit pause and take a few moments to write down a few thoughts as far as how you look at the world, which is that first question on page 9 in your workbook. What are some things that influence how you see the world, the events that occur in the world, the evil that goes on in the world, the suffering, and how do you understand those things and how do we respond to them? So take a few moments, write those things down, and then just jump back to the video. Everyone has a worldview, even if they claim not to. You already have a worldview, even if you haven't really spent any time writing it down or thinking about it or even recognizing it. So on the rest of page 9, what we're going to do is just take some notes and get a definition and say this is what a worldview is, so that when we get on to the next page, on page 10 in your workbook, what we're going to do is begin to put together and think about what our worldview is as followers of Christ and as children of God. So first, what is a worldview? All right, a worldview is a framework from which we view reality and make sense of life and the world. David Nobel, an author of a book called Understanding the Times, puts it this way. It's any ideology, philosophy, theology, movement, or religion that provides an overarching approach to understanding God, the world, and man's relations to God and the world. Okay, that is a mouthful. A worldview is a way of looking at the world and one's place in the world. It's a perspective on reality. Norman Geisler, who is a Christian philosopher, and William Watkins both likened a worldview to like a pair of colored eyeglasses, right? You'd put the eyeglasses on, and if they are green colored, if one looks at the world, you're going to see it as being green. While another can look at the exact same object, but if they are looking at it through red eyeglasses, are going to see it as red, right? So a worldview is kind of like those glasses that you'd wear that help me see. It affects how I see the world, which is perhaps you begin to see then how important a person's worldview is, because that worldview impacts virtually every decision in life then. One author put it this way: our choices are shaped by what we believe is real and true, right and wrong, good and beautiful. Our choices are shaped by our worldview. In other words, our worldview determines how we live and the choices we make. So as followers of Christ, we are called to live in accordance with God's will. So specifically, Christian worldview then is going to be viewing the world through a Christian, a biblical lens. That Christian worldview is one in which the Bible is going to play a huge part of it, of determining how we see the world around us. So another way to think about it, a worldview is what's going to help me take what I know from God's word and kind of form a unified, meaningful response to the challenges and opportunities I experience in life. All right, you might want to maybe hit pause or hit stop and just rewind that again and listen to it in case it all didn't make sense, or there were parts that you understood and parts that you didn't, but to get a handle on what we are talking about then when we talk about what a worldview is. Then when you're ready to go, flip the page in your workbook and jump onto the top of page 10 where we see that a worldview has 4 basic parts. There is a fundamental assertion, which basically just talks about, or this is where we would determine our belief about God. Does he exist or doesn't he? How involved is he in the world? How involved is he in my life? The second aspect of a worldview, or the second part of a worldview, is philosophy. That's really where what's real, what is reality, where did we come from, who are we, what has gone wrong with the world, what solution can be offered to fix it. Which then moves us into the third part, which is ethics, right? How does what I believe then affect how I now live and act and behave? And that kind of gets us then into the last part of the future. You know, what beliefs do I have about the goals life is moving toward? So as you kind of think about those 4 things and you begin to put together, okay, this is what the Bible tells me and how this all kind of fits together, gets us to the bottom of page 10, where we're going to begin to, or where you are going to begin to work on your own worldview and stating it and kind of thinking that through. Be aware, this is going to take some time to work through and think about. This is not I can figure this out in 5 minutes. This is going to be something that's going to require a bit of just thought and maybe jotting down notes and organizing things and just thinking it out. So you might want to jot a few things down and then just think on it a little bit and come back to it. More just want you to be prepared. This might take some time to work out in your mind. So as you work it out then, put your thoughts down in the Google Doc listed under the What's Your Worldview question in Google Classroom. And then in about a week, go back to that document and read what others have written about their worldview. Find 1 or 2 more good things that you liked from what someone else has written and add it to your own. Once you've gotten a start on your worldview, it's something that you probably want to come back to every so often and just read through, both to kind of recenter yourself and make sure that, yeah, this is how I see the world. And these are the things that I keep in mind as I understand the perspective I have on whatever's going on in my life. But there might be parts that you update or state more clearly. So once you've kind of worked that through and at least have gotten a good rudimentary start on your worldview, you can head on to page 11, where we begin to learn and understand that the most important part of a worldview then is to make sure that it actually works in practical applications. And so this is a chance to put that into practice a little bit. So I'm going to give you two different worldviews or aspects of a worldview. One is moral relativism, and the other is like a naturalistic or naturalism worldview. I've included a few links to help you in the Testing Your Worldview material post. They're both from Wikipedia, so relatively short. You can probably just read the first couple paragraphs and at least have a decent understanding of what they're talking about. And so when you do that, read each of those posts and then answer the three questions listed on page 10 for each of those two worldviews. So answer those three questions about moral relativism and then on naturalism as well, and see how they don't really work in all practical applications. And so then we can look and say, well, those aren't really good worldviews because there are some places where they don't work. All right, so you can hit pause and do that, and then head on back when you're done, and we'll move on to the last page of our lesson. All right, onward to page 12. There are a few more worldviews listed there on the top of the page in the What's the Worldview? It's also one of the assignments in Google Classroom. So head on over to the Google Classroom there in the What's the Worldview and hit the What's the Worldview assignment and see if you can match up the worldview with its correct definition. Maybe you figured it out too, just as you go through it, that oftentimes a person isn't going to have just a buy into a single worldview, but rather they're going to take and pick and choose and mix and match all sorts of different ideas from a whole bunch of different worldviews. So just as you interact with people and you begin to pick up on how they see the world, understand that it might not just be a cut and dry, this is what they believe, and say, okay, they're agnostic or atheist, but they might, have a therapeutic moral deism, and they might take some ideas from moral relativism and from naturalism and kind of mash it all together into something that, as you talk about it, may not make sense or may raise a whole bunch of questions in your mind, but in their minds, they've begun to square it away. And so it might not just be a single worldview that a person has, but they might be taking ideas from several different worldviews and putting them together to explain how they see the world. All right, as we wrap up lesson 2 then, on the bottom of page 12, I'm going to ask you to write a prayer for those whose worldview prevents them from seeing Jesus as their Savior. So you can jot your notes down there and write it out on the bottom of page 12, and then just copy it over and share your prayer with the rest of the class on our Padlet page. The final part of this week's lesson is your learning log. So in the learning log, just share 1 or 2 things that you found hard in putting together the start of your worldview. All right, that's it then for lesson 2. If you have any questions, be sure to ask me either in Google Classroom or shoot me a short video asking your question in Flipgrid. And I look forward to interacting with you online as we go through lesson 2 together. God's richest blessings on your studies and on your week. See you next week.